Primary Election Day 2021. Voters are deciding local races. Communities face several challenges, including COVID, homelessness, the need for affordable housing, and rising concerns about public safety. Who will advance to the general election? This is a King 5 special presentation. Here's your host, King 5's chief political reporter, Chris Daniels.
And voters have been casting their ballots all day, but just moments ago, ballot drop boxes have officially closed. Now it is time to start tabulating the results. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Daniels, and it is primary election night. Voters across the state cast their ballots in 37 of the state's 39 counties, and there are 250 races on ballots in Western Washington. We expect to see the first results at any minute. And already we are seeing one storyline develop, and that is an extremely low voter turnout. Below 15% in Pierce County, just above 20% statewide, well off the pace in the primary 2 years ago when we saw turnout near 30%. And it doesn't even compare with last fall's presidential turnout of 84%. Still, there are a lot of races of importance, mayor's races in Seattle, Tacoma, and Everett. Multiple King County council members are being challenged. And in the city of Seattle, a lot of eyes on who may advance to the general election. And let's not forget a nearly $900 million property tax levy in King County. So while we wait for those numbers to come in, let's bring in our King 5 News political analyst. Ron Sims is the former three-term King County executive and deputy secretary in the Obama administration. Scott McClellan is the former George W. Bush White House press secretary and is a New York Times best-selling author. Welcome to you both. And let's start with you, Ron. You've got the experience in the King County Executive's office with those 3 terms. You watch civic politics very closely in Seattle. I think you're probably paying a lot of attention tonight to that Seattle mayor's race. What's your take?
I am focused on that Seattle mayor's race. Seattle mayor's office, being the mayor of Seattle, is actually considered nationally to be very, very significant. It is considered to be a very dynamic area. It has proximity to one of our leading trading partners in terms of China. And so a great deal of attention will be focused on who is the Seattle mayor and what does that Seattle mayor wish to accomplish. We're also a pretty dynamic city, an experimental one in many respects when you look at all the things that are occurring here that are brand new and are cutting edge. So the next mayor of Seattle is going to have their hands full trying to keep up with a dynamic Seattle that is quickly changing, attracts a lot of amazing businesses, a research center nationally and internationally. It is a really amazing job to have.
Scott McClellan, you have been through a lot of campaigns. This mayor's race, people tend to forget. Tonight, it's all about finishing in the top 2, but with numbers, with those ballot numbers so low, how do you think that's going to impact what we see here tonight?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think that traditionally that's going to favor the candidates that have the best name identification, and those tend to be ones that have held office before. The presumed front runners are Harrell and Gonzalez, and that's what little polling we've seen out there says. So you would think that they would come in with an advantage because of that name ID, because of that experience that they have in elected office. But at the same time, if you've got a candidate that is able to generate some excitement and some energy around her supporters or his supporters, then maybe they can squeeze in there and be one of those top 2 finishers that move on to the general election. And one that we're watching closely tonight is Colleen Echohawk. She has run a pretty strong campaign, been able to raise a fair amount of money to compete. But still, as you pointed out, Chris, the turnout is awfully low, and you know that what that says is something to look at. Is that fatigue? Is that on the part of voters around elections? Is that maybe just a lack of overall energy and excitement from the candidates themselves? I think it'll get more interesting after tonight, or after we know who the candidates are heading into general election. But we're going to be watching closely tonight where those 3 finish in particular: Harrell, Gonzalez, and Echohawk.
And anyone who follows politics knows that the incumbent, Jenny Durkin, is not running for re-election. To give you an idea of just what it would take to get out of a primary like this, all you have to do is look back 4 years ago. Durkin received just 28% of the vote in that primary 4 years ago. Carrie Moon received a little over 17%. So those top two finishers, it may only take 15 to 17% of the vote to actually advance to the general election in the fall. The person who is following this race very closely, has been talking to the mayoral candidates throughout the week, is my colleague Ted Land. Ted is standing by live now. Ted, what do you have?
Hi, Chris. We are in Les Shy at Bruce Harrell's party. The crowd here continues to grow. It just rained really briefly and everyone ran for cover, and we're still hearing a few claps of thunder, but it looks like things are drying out here and more people are starting to arrive. We are just waiting for numbers here at the party. Harrell will address the crowd once the first batch of numbers comes in and he gets a better sense of what voters are thinking tonight. He's planning to address the crowd here behind me, and then we'll do some interviews with us after that. Here's a candidate, though, with a lot of political experience compared to the 15 candidates who are running for office here. He's a former 3-term council member and interim mayor. He has said that we will not defund our police, we will improve our police. Calls homelessness a big plan for how to address this using federal dollars, the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, to fund the purchase and construction of hundreds of units of affordable housing. You know, homelessness, policing, the economy, these are all very big issues heading into the election that the candidates have been talking about. Harrell, one of 15 candidates from a wide range of background. It's kind of hard to keep track of everybody because there are so many of them, but those three who you mentioned are the ones we're really keeping an eye on tonight. We spoke with Harrell right as he arrived to his party about the campaign and what it's been like for him going through all this. Here's what he said.
Well, the campaign has been awesome. I have a great set of volunteers who believe that our messaging and our strategy makes sense. You know, I've told people repeatedly that politics can be simple. The solutions may not be as simple, but the part of campaigning is speak truth to power. That we believe in a collaborative approach. We believe in effective public safety. We believe in business, small business revitalization, and so we think we have the answers to that the city wants, and I think they are starving for effective leadership right now.
We told him we wanted to talk to him again once the numbers come in, and he said, "We'll see if I'm smiling then." But we're still waiting here for those numbers, Chris. We'll let you know when we have some more reaction here.
Well, Ted, thank you. And I have good news for you because we do have the numbers just in from King County elections, I am told. There you see it. I'm reacting along with you as you see Bruce Harrell, who Ted just talked with, at 38%, Lorena Gonzalez at 29%, Colleen Echohawk, that you heard Scott McClellan talking about, at just 8%, with Jessen Farrell at 8% as well. Just based on those numbers and based on what we're seeing in the vote tallies thus far, that seems to be a comfortable margin for both Bruce Harrell and Lorena Gonzalez, which would seem to also pit the current Seattle City Council member against the former Seattle City Council member. Both have been Seattle City Council presidents at one point in time, current and past. Now let's go to Seattle Council Seat 8. Teresa Mosqueda, the incumbent, looking clear for November at 55% of the vote. Kenneth Wilson and Kate Martin are trailing. We'll see how that race unfolds over the next couple of days when we get more numbers. And here is one that a lot of people have been watching. This is the seat that has been vacated by Lorena Gonzalez as she attempts to run for mayor. Sarah Nelson at 43% of the vote. Nikita Oliver, who ran for mayor 4 years ago, at 35%. Brianna Thomas, who is the chief of staff for Gonzalez, at 14%. So again, it looks based on those numbers and the amount of votes that have been tallied in this primary that Sarah Nelson and Nikita Oliver will be advancing to November. That would pit two political extremes somewhat, in that Nikita Oliver has been saying all along during this campaign that they believe in abolishing the police department or defunding the police department. Sarah Nelson, the co-founder of Fremont Brewing, has been running as more of a moderate, touting her past working in the Seattle City Council. So you have a pro-business candidate there versus somebody who is very accomplished on the stump in Nikita Oliver. They have been campaigning, it seems like, here for the last 4 years for this race. And for more on this race, let me turn it over to Callie Greenberg, who's standing by at one of the campaign parties. Callie.
Right, this is Sarah Nelson's campaign watch party here. This is at Stoop Brewing. I know you mentioned, Chris, that she is the co-owner of Fremont Brewing, but this is Stoop Brewing in Ballard. We got a group here. In fact, they are currently looking for Sarah. Is that correct? To give her, they are looking for Sarah right now, I'm sure, to give her these initial numbers so she's aware. So people are hanging out here. As you mentioned, Chris, one thing here about Sarah Nelson, she said when she is campaigning that she is a strong supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. She's also mentioned that she is not a supporter of defunding the police. But in addition to that, we want to focus on the small business. Oh, here she is walking in right now. And we'll see if we can cut there.
Oh, I missed it.
You're on live.
Oh.
You're on live.
What happened? What happened?
You're winning.
All right.
Yeah, and you're on live.
How are you feeling right now?
Thrilled and surprised. Not really surprised. It's hard to put into words. Relieved. Yeah. Verklempt, can you tell?
And these are the initial numbers.
I know. And I recognize that, traditionally, votes can, the votes change as the week goes on. So this is certainly not, indicative of the end, but I'm feeling good about the position that we're in right now.
And when you see those numbers, first thing that went through your head?
First thing that went through my head was all that work paid off. I mean, you see a room full of people here that put their blood, sweat, tears, resources into helping me win. So basically, this is a collective effort. And I'm just happy that I didn't disappoint yet. So.
And last question from me for now. What topic do you really want to tackle?
It's less of a topic than more the way government should work. Local government should be for the people, and I want to really work on restoring public trust in local government and city council. I want to show that there is it's possible to have a more balanced approach to many of the very challenging issues that we are facing. And that, crisis breeds opportunity, and this is a chance for a major political reset in this town in the positive direction.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. We will continue talking to Sarah throughout the night, but for now, Chris, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Callie, I love live television. We got the first reaction there from Sarah Nelson, who looks to be in comfortable shape out of this primary and heading on to November. Let's look at the King County Executives race, because this has been interesting in that Dow Constantine, the incumbent, hasn't really had a challenge since 2009. He's running for his fourth term, and he has been challenged from the left by State Senator Joe Wynn, and you can see Constantine's numbers, 54%. And Wynn at 30%. Just to give you some historical context, in the last couple of general elections, Constantine has been at 77% of the vote in 2017 in the general, 78% in 2013. So he's sitting right now at 54% with a legitimate challenge from Joe Wynn. This is a barometer for Wynn as he moves now, it looks like, on to the general election for a full challenge of Constantine here in November. So some interesting numbers to pick apart there in terms of the strength of Dow Constantine here in this primary with the first returns on this primary night. So let's bring in once again our King 5 News political analysts Ron Sims and Scott McClellan. Ron, I know you have been waiting for those first numbers on the mayor's race. You saw that it looks like a comfortable margin with the top two and the rest of the field. What's your takeaway?
I really wanted to see just two candidates who were clearly being preferred by the voters. And we saw that in the Seattle mayor's race. It's going to be exciting because it's going to be an issue of what Seattle's future is. Mayors have a tremendous amount of influence, and what you want to know is where we're going and how we're going to get there. What will we look like and be compared with in terms of the rest of the country? Are people going to say, wow, Seattle is still an awesome place to live? Does it have a political composition that drives success? Seattle has a lot to lose and a lot to gain, and I think with these two candidates, Seattle is going to be very comfortable. It's going to be the magic city as we always wanted it to be.
Scott McClellan, it looks like it could be a matchup between the current Seattle City Council president and the past Seattle City Council president, just based on these numbers, these first numbers that we have here tonight. What do you think of that matchup as we potentially head towards November?
Well, and I think you're right. Those are some pretty strong numbers starting out. I know there's still more votes to come in, but they look in pretty good shape that it's going to be between Harrell and Gonzalez. And I think what's going to be really important now, particularly for Bruce Harrell, is to start to draw a contrast in this race and start to build more energy and excitement. I think if you look back more recently, that those that tend to win the general election are more progressive. Now, Durkin was an exception, but the more progressive candidate, I think, tends to win the general election. So I think Harrell actually is going to have a harder challenge in the general election and getting out there and drawing some contrast, maybe framing it around one big issue this election. Could that be like New York City when it was framed around public safety and policing and accountability and reform? And certainly here we've seen a lot of gun violence and crime and issues around police and accountability. So I think Harrell really needs to find a way to define this issue clearly for voters and build energy and excitement around his supporters and those that are undecided, because Gonzalez is going to be heavily backed by the labor unions, as we know, and well funded. And it's a matter of, is this going to be Seattle going, as Ron was alluding to, the direction of more progressive change that is more ideological and uncompromising, or is it going to be Seattle going in a direction of more pragmatic progressivism? And that's really the difference. Both these candidates are progressives. There's not a huge difference in some of their policies and issues, but it comes down to who can be effective in moving Seattle forward and finding solutions to the big issues.
And we could see some money put into this race as well. We've already seen political action committees, labor-backed, backing Lorena Gonzalez. We've already seen business money in a political action committee going towards Bruce Harrell. So we can probably expect that to happen as we go here for closer to November. Now, here is what is shaping up already to be the story of the night. Pete Holmes, the longtime Seattle City attorney, in a fight from the left and from the right. He has seen support from both sides of the political spectrum against him. And right now, he is losing. And in a fight to even get out of the primary election, Ann Davison, who ran as a Republican for lieutenant governor last year and previously ran as a Democrat for the Seattle City Council in District 5, is leading Holmes right now by just the smallest of margins, a little under 2%. And Nicole Thomas Kennedy, who has been described as an abolitionist, somebody who wants to dismantle the Seattle City Attorney's Office, is just, 0.6 of a point behind him. There is a chance here that Holmes may not make it out of the primary. We have seen his level of concern rise in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. The Seattle Times endorsed Davison. Holmes ramped up his email campaigns to try and get people out to fill out their ballots. And you can see that he is indeed in a three-way fight here to finish in the top two to move on to November and retain his seat. That is going to be a story that people are talking about tomorrow based on public safety and homelessness. The criticism of his office has only grown in the last 4 years, and I think you can read this tonight as this is the electorate talking that they are unsatisfied with the current direction of the city attorney's office, and this is going to be something that will now play out over the next several days when more of those late ballots continue to get counted. I think we're going to move on now to the King County Council races. There's 3 of them that are facing competition tonight. 3 Republican members, I should point out, in King County. The longtime council member, Pete von Reichbauer, appears to be doing well tonight in terms of positioning himself for November with almost 56% of the vote. There is a question, as you can see there on the screen, about who he will face here in the general election. Now let's move on to the next race. That was District 7. This is District 3. The incumbent, Kathy Lambert. She's facing Joe Cohen and Sarah Perry, and you can see that Lambert, with 42% of the vote, seems to have a comfortable distance between herself and her challengers to finish there in the top 2. But that, as an incumbent, below 50%, not necessarily a number that you're excited about in a primary like this. And finally, District 9, the incumbent, Reagan Dunn. He's at 57% of the vote tonight. So it looks like a comfortable margin for Reagan Dunn to finish there in the top 2 and move on to November. Let's talk now about the mayor's race. Bruce Harrell coming in front tonight. He's talking now live.
I would like the investigation period of 180 days to be expanded. I would like to see more subpoena power given to some of the accountability bodies that have a limited subpoena power now. I'd like to see more civilian investigators in the OPA system. So there's going to be, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you very much. That's Jeremy from the Transit Union 587, my friends. Thank you for being here. We love our bus drivers. So there's some specific ideas in the SPAW contract that I will see to fruition. But yes, we will look at the accountability system and make sure that that's what the public wants, that's what the accountability advocates believe in, and it's a best practice. I'm going to take one more question.
I just want to,
yes.
Because we just jumped in, I think we would just want to revisit something. Just looking at the numbers that came in tonight, can you just kind of reflect on what that says to you and maybe your confidence level moving forward as more ballots keep coming in?
Well, we're certainly pleased with the results, and we think that, as you may recall, when I announced about 4 or 5 months ago, I said I believe in effective public safety, 7-minute response times. I understand why people want to defund, but I want to reimagine and reform. And I needed people to feel like they had a common sense leader in the mayor. I also talked about job creation and small business revitalization, and I led with that because, as I talked about my personal background, that my black grandparents came here for jobs and opportunity. My Japanese grandparents came here for jobs and opportunity. So we want to have a vibrant system. And I also talked about the homelessness issue, that under my leadership, we will have an open, transparent plan where you will see cost per person, cost per unit. We will show people our soft underbelly of the city with who's living on the streets, and we will take action. So under our candidacy, you'll have a mayor of action. And quite honestly, you'll see the people here, they know that about me, that I have no tolerance for inaction. So I think the city, what the results are saying.
That is Bruce Harrell, the candidate for mayor. The former Seattle City Council president looks to comfortably be moving on to November. You heard him just touch on issues of race. It also looks like the 2 finalists for mayor will be people of color. That will be a story as we move forward here on to the general election in the fall. Let's talk about the pricey property tax levy that is on the ballot. This is known as Best Starts for Kids. It is a renewal of a levy that was passed back in 2015 for $392 million. The backers wanted to more than double that to $872 million for 550 odd programs, maternal health, after-school programs, nonprofit outreach programs, all under the umbrella of Best Starts for Kids. It was approved back in 2015 by a 56-24 margin. Similar numbers tonight, although it's better for the backers. 59-41, we should point out, unanimously approved to be put on the ballot by the King County Council, by both Republicans and Democrats. There was no real opposition to this levy. It is a big ask, and it looks like it will pass here tonight. 59-41, the numbers with the ballots that have been counted thus far. Let's talk more about a couple of interesting results, particularly that Seattle City Attorney's race. Let's bring in once again our King 5 News political analysts Scott McClellan and Ron Sims. And Scott, this time I'd like to start with you. What do you make of such a competitive race there in the Seattle City Attorney's race?
Well, I think you touched on it earlier when you talked about it. It would seem to suggest that people are not happy with the city attorney, and that's why you're seeing him being squeezed right now. Now, the good news is he's still a little bit ahead there in second place for him, at least. The good news is, and so he may get out of this. But I think he's got a real race on his hand based on what the numbers we're seeing tonight as the longtime incumbent, right? And he's going to have to get out there and really work to hold on to the seat if he gets out of the primary tonight.
Yeah, Ron, you look at those numbers with two kind of new political candidates, and in Davison and Thomas Kennedy. Thomas Kennedy has been she's been a public defender. Davison has run a couple of campaigns, as I noted earlier. Those numbers, if you're the incumbent, when you factor in the other candidates, I don't think anybody is happy with the Holmes campaign tonight. What do you make of those numbers?
I would agree with you. When you're the incumbent and you have these kind of numbers, you have a lot to worry about. And it appears that he's going to have a candidate. There's going to be more when he is in the general election, if he gets to the general election, because you look at those numbers, he may not even get to the general election. But this is pretty stunning. I looked at those numbers and said, whoa, it's quite a surprise. He's been in office a long time. He's been a city attorney for a very, very long time. And I was surprised that he was doing as poorly as he was, which means that he's not communicating the efforts of what he's doing as a city attorney. People don't know what the city attorney is doing. And he had two other candidates who had ideas as to what the city attorney should be doing to help continue to stimulate the growth of Seattle, change its direction. But those were some interesting numbers, and it'll be interesting as the night goes on. It'd be interesting whether he stays in second or goes to third. But I was pretty shocked by those numbers. I was shocked.
I think I was shocked too. I mean, if you look at previous Seattle elections, you only have to think back to Greg Nichols, who didn't get out of the primary, and the numbers that he had and what that meant about the incumbent, just based on past Seattle history. That is not a good number for Pete Holmes tonight. Let's look to the south in the city of Tacoma, the city of destiny. There is a mayor's race there as well. Victoria Woodard's the incumbent. She has been very vocal of late on public safety, the death of Mayoral. She has been challenged by two political newcomers. And if you're an incumbent on a primary night and you're over 50%, usually you're feeling pretty good. But let's get a take on the temperature in Tacoma. My colleague Lionel Donovan, Tacoma Bureau Chief, standing by. Lionel.
That's right. As it stands right now, the early numbers are showing that Victoria Woodard will be facing off against Steve Harrell. So far, according to these early numbers, he has secured around a third of the vote here in Tacoma. Now, there are quite a few issues that both of them have spoken to me about, but the thing that's top of mind here is housing insecurity and homelessness. It's no secret that here in Tacoma, housing prices have been going through the roof, and there have been many calls to provide more housing for Tacoma residents. Now, the mayor has put forward some initiatives to put in order to meet that need, and started to try to find ways to rezone some of the areas in the city. However, Harrell, who has a background in construction, says that rezoning isn't enough, and that there will have to be some different ways of designing the city in order to make sure that the current residents are able to take in these new developments and the people that are living in them as well. Another issue that he's talking about is homelessness. The encampments that have shown up throughout the city have been a cause of concern here in Tacoma for some time now. And although a camping ban has been put in place, there have been varied opinions about that, but it looks like Harrell and Woodard will be able to talk about that over the next couple of months. For now, we're live in Tacoma. Lionel Donovan, King 5 News.
Thank you, Lionel. Let's swing back again to Seattle in that Council Seat 9. This is the open seat being vacated by Lorena Gonzalez, who is running for mayor. And I'm a bit surprised at the numbers tonight, with Sarah Nelson at 43%, Nikita Oliver at 35%. Brianna Thomas, the chief of staff for Lorena Gonzalez, is at 14%. So it does look, based on the tabulations tonight and the amount of people that have voted thus far and are expected to vote, that it will be Nelson and Oliver in the fall. That will set up a contrast of Nelson, who is a pro-business candidate, who has also touted her past career working in the Seattle City Council, and Nikita Oliver. They have been really on the front lines of the social justice movement here in Seattle, especially in the last year and a half. They also finished third in the race for mayor 4 years ago. They are a viable candidate moving forward in this council race for position 9. And then we look now at the Seattle mayor's race. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this tonight and a bit surprised at the margin of difference between second and third place, just based on the available polling. Colleen Echohawk, Lorena Gonzalez, and Bruce Harrell all seem to be clumped together, but tonight it does look like Harrell and Gonzalez will be facing off in November, which provides a contrast of its own. Let's go back to our King 5 News political consultants, Ron Sims and Scott McClellan. Ron, what do you think of the margin tonight, not only in that council race, but in the mayor's race, and what that means for the electorate at large?
I find it refreshing. We used to say that, expect that we were going to see large percentages heading toward one candidate or another candidate. There's a lot of splits tonight, which is really, really important. And I think you're going to have a vibrant campaigns. A lot of issues are going to be on the table and discussed, and people are going to have a chance to make a decision about the future of their government, with different and what personalities they want to lead it. So I'm rather excited about this. I'm so used to dull politics, where somebody has the commanding number and everybody decides that's going to be the candidate to be elected. You cannot do that with the numbers we're seeing this evening. We're going to have a very exciting general election.
Scott, what do you think, both on position 9 and the mayor's race, just the margins with the vote totals that we've already seen tonight?
I agree. I think it's going to be an exciting general election. It's going to say a lot about the future direction of Seattle and where voters want to see the city move. I think probably position 9 may say more than even the mayor's race about the direction voters want to see the city move and want our elected leaders to take this city and the big issues that is. When you look at position 9, I think I'm a little surprised too. I would think those numbers might be a little bit reversed, where they are in the lead over Nelson. But I think if I'm Nelson, I'm feeling pretty good tonight heading into that general election. And now it's going to be drawing that contrast between the choice for voters. And in both of those elections, Harrell and Nelson will need to draw a clear choice. The other candidates are going to have some enthusiastic, passionate supporters out there in the general election.
Ron, I want you to weigh in on the King County Executive's race, because you held that office for so long. You look at Dow Constantine, 54%. He's over 50% tonight, which is always good if you're an incumbent. Joe Wynn, though, with 30% of the vote. Is that a barometer for what to expect here as we go forward to November? Or what do you think that means for Dow's position there in the executive's race?
I think if I were the executive with these numbers, I would be a little concerned. You want numbers like 58%, 59%, or 60%, and he didn't get those numbers this evening. So he's going to have to put the jets on and really work hard to get higher percentages. But he also can look at the numbers and say the other candidates have to do twice as much or 3 times as much work to be able to defeat him, and because their numbers just don't work as they are now situated. But I think that the county executive is going to walk into his office tomorrow and he's going to tell his staff, we got to rock and roll, we got to get the jets going, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
Well, I can tell you that State Senator Joe Wynn has already sent out an email saying that the progressive winds are at his back and he is ready to advance on to November, feeling good about his position tonight as well. So really, the top lines, it does look like we have a top 2 advancing to November with Bruce Harrell and Lorena Gonzalez in the Seattle mayor's race. It looks like we have our top 2 in that open council seat, position 9. Teresa Mosqueda looks like she's in good position for council position 8. And the big headline headline. It looks like the Seattle City Attorney is in trouble. Homelessness and public safety weighing on his office. We'll have more analysis from Ron and Scott coming up tonight. King 5 News at 9 and 10.